However, United States loses to Italy in the World Baseball Classic, so they could potentially be eliminated today, and wild things going on. But free agency news brought to us by ZipRecruiter. Try it free at ZipRecruiter.com/USL. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. So last night, out of nowhere,
So out of nowhere that when it came through on our group chat, I had to triple check it.
Well, it's so out of nowhere that multiple people on the group chat did not believe it was real.
The graphic didn't look real. The graphic
did not.
looked fake.
So the Raiders put out a tweet that read the following way. The Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade agreement for Maxx Crosby. We will have no further comment at this time. Courtney Cronin, you cover the NFL for a living on a regular daily basis. What happened here? What did the Ravens find that made them back out?
They didn't find anything. They already had this information about Maxx Crosby, the meniscus, the information that everybody around the NFL had, that this guy was getting a procedure done in the offseason on his knee, which was injured at the end of last year, thus why he was shut down for the last couple games in Vegas. Everybody knew that this was going to happen. So when they do their physical, they already have most of the information that they need to know. Otherwise, you don't end up making that trade in the first place. What happened here, and I think that we can all read between the lines, is that the Ravens got cold feet with the 2 first-round picks that they ended up giving up for Maxx Crosby, including number 14 this year. And it may seem like a loophole, it may seem shady, but it's technically within their right for their doctors to not sign off on something if they started having second thoughts about this trade and whether it was worth the price in which they were paying. So the reporting that comes out last night from Adam Schefter and others is that he failed the physical. So he goes to Baltimore before he can sign today, 4 p.m. when it becomes finalized. He has to go through a physical. This process goes down. We find Maxx Crosby via Instagram on a plane, seemingly going back to Las Vegas, to where he reverts back to their roster now. And there is a whole domino effect that's going to come out of this, because the last 2 days they've been one of the busiest teams in free agency, getting all these new players because they expected Maxx Crosby to not be on their roster. So in the process now of having to scramble to figure out who they can keep, who they have to now let go of and let other teams get involved with before free agency officially starts. In the process of that, they also lost $30 million in cap space because Maxx Crosby reverted back to their roster. I've never seen a mess like this. I've covered one of the recent trades that was negated because of a failed physical. Everybody remembers the great PJ Hall trade of 2020 in Minnesota.
Still talking about it.
Kidding. No one remembers it. But it's so rare that something like this happens with a player of this caliber. And I think it really points to the fact that the Ravens now are going to be looked at by 31 other teams as, can we actually do business with you? Because you going within your right to now negate a trade because you say your doctors aren't comfortable signing off on this and their tolerance of risk. This is going to, the domino effect that comes off of this is pretty significant. And I'm really curious to see over the next 12 hours what happens.
So, Court, I just want to follow up on one thing quickly, just for the sake of clarity and to make this statement. You don't believe the Ravens are backing out of this trade for health-related reasons?
No, I do not. I do think that 32 teams have 32 medical staffs that have different tolerances for risk. However, when you think about when the trade was going down on Friday and all of the information that teams have to gather, like when teams hit free agency, it isn't just like the day that they make a trade, they decide, everybody in a room, okay, Maxx Crosby, that's the guy we want, let's go in and get him. Like they have free agency meetings for weeks leading into the combine because they have to set their board of priorities for free agency and then priorities for the draft. So what we've learned here, and in hearing from Dr. Neil Elatrosh, his surgeon, who Adam Schefter has a quote from today, which speaks to where Maxx Crosby will be at the start of next season. His agent came out and said that he's going to be healthy. He expects him to go back to being as dominant of a player as he's ever been. But every time that deals like this are made, doctors, PT people, agents, all of this, they know exactly where they are in the rehab process, before you strike the deal. They knew all of this stuff beforehand, but now that they had a chance to put their hands physically on Maxx Crosby, and get and basically find a reason to veto the trade by saying, "Oh, wait, actually, like we got a closer look at the knee. It doesn't look as good as we thought," even though they knew he wouldn't be ready at this point of the offseason and then going into the preseason. I think it's a conveniently timed excuse to be able to back out of a deal that they were getting roasted for, because 2 first-round picks for a non-quarterback in this climate is a lot.
It is a lot, but this is a team that needs a big swing. They need to get to a certain place. You move on from a legendary coach like John Harbaugh because what had been happening in Baltimore was not good enough. You have to maximize the window that you have with a 2-time, could have been 3-time MVP in Lamar Jackson. And I know it was a steep price to pay for Maxx Crosby, but I also appreciated the Ravens going for it, for saying we're not going to just sit back and think that what we have is good enough. We are going to add an impact player like Maxx Crosby. And Courtney's right on so many things. And the domino effect, the residue that's going to come from this is so significant. What do the Ravens do now? Where do they pivot? How do they add to their team? To Courtney's point, how are teams going to approach doing business with the Ravens after this? She brought up the Raiders. They were big spenders on Monday. They had the most cap space in the league, and they were adding pieces left and right. Financially, how does that impact them? What happens with Maxx Crosby now? That's what's really interesting to me, is what is going to happen to his value after this? What teams are going to go after him? What does Vegas do with Maxx Crosby after this?
So all those follow-ups we're going to get to coming up, because there's so many aspects of this. Again, the Ravens backed out. We got to use the Raiders terminology here, because that's the only public statement from either team so far, right? And the player, Maxx Crosby, has not made a public statement to my knowledge yet, at least by way of his social media or anything like that. So again, the Ravens backed out of the Maxx Crosby trade. 2 first-rounders were going to the Raiders, who have used a lot of this cap space that they got from Crosby for other players. That doesn't mean that they can't get those other players, but do they have to change the agreements? We're going to get to that. Could Crosby get traded today, as Smalls mentioned? Also, if Trey Hendrickson had already agreed with another team, would all of this be happening? Just throwing that out there. There's so much to dive into. We will continue to do that coming up. But first, a lot of money going around in the NFL, which means a lot of tax implications, Smalls. Where do people need to go? What did you miss late last night? You missed the second best individual performance in terms of scoring points in NBA history. Bam Adebayo, Miami Heat, scored 83 points in a single game against the Wizards. His previous high was 41. You missed Team USA losing in the World Baseball Classic to Team Italy, where the United States could actually be eliminated during pool play, the round robin pool play today, if Mexico wins by scoring less than 5 runs in a game against Italy.
Which was news to people, including Team USA manager Mark DeRosa.
We will get to that.
Isn't that incredible?
And, of course, NFL free agency, which we thought would be #1 on the docket today, the biggest story in sports, and it is, but there were 2 other things we had to mention there. Beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern today, Adam Schefter joined us yesterday in the 7 a.m. Eastern hour. He rightfully, in the moment, said, I'm sick and tired of calling this legal tampering because of the fact that, every deal is basically done. Not so fast, my friend, right? Because of the fact that now we learn that the Maxx Crosby deal is off. That the Raiders said to us last night that the Ravens backed out of this. So now let's talk about the Raiders side of it. So Crosby, per NFL media, is back in Vegas and is going to go into the building today.
Imagine what that is going to feel like. For somebody who, in his goodbye letter, talked about how much he loved this organization. He had mentally said his goodbyes to the fans. He's in Baltimore. He's posting pictures. He is, again, from a mental standpoint, has turned the page. And now all of a sudden everything unravels and you're back in Vegas, a place that didn't want you?
Some have said, quick break, we're back. That's what that is. I mean, right there. Like, it's amazing. So now I'm of the belief they have to trade him by 4 o'clock today, Eastern time. They can't keep going with this because they need the room. Courtney, just from an X's and O's perspective in terms of the contracts, I believe that they can fit everybody in that they had previously signed, but contracts may have to be shifted. Guarantees may have to be adjusted. Every team's going to now come after these guys. I mean, Mike Tannenbaum's out there saying, our front office insider, that the Ravens should try to get Tyler Linderbaum back. Hey, you got the cap space now. Go get him back. What do you think has to happen by today at 4 p.m. Eastern with the Raiders and Crosby?
I agree with you that I think that they need to trade him because for a number of different reasons, I don't think it can work as simply as trade failed, you failed your physical, you come back and you're part of this defense. Now, would I like to see Nakobe Dean and Maxx Crosby in the same defense? Of course, anybody would. I think that good players added to your front seven, that's a recipe for success. However, you said Maxx Crosby and the love letter and everything that and Michelle pointed out too, like all of the goodbyes that he's already had to mentally prepare himself for. Like that was all said with the intention in his mind that he was going somewhere else where you can put a bow on it, let bygones be bygones, whatever. Now you're going back to a place that shut you down at the end of last season when you felt you were healthy enough to play, a place where there definitely is a little bit of animosity, even if it is a new coaching staff. I don't think it can work. I don't think you can put the toothpaste back in the tube here. But the idea of them having all of the other teams that missed out on this trade, we know that the Dallas Cowboys were close. Apparently on Friday, they were willing to offer pretty significant trade compensation. There were other teams that were calling about Maxx Crosby. I don't think it's as simple as Ravens say, no thanks, we can't do this. And then all these other teams line up and are like, okay, we'll give you what you want. No way in hell they're getting 2 first-round picks now. But no. I think that they're going to have to be the aggressors in this situation where they're reaching out to teams being like, hey, could we get a deal back on the table? What would it take for you to take on a contract like this, knowing that every other team has been doing business the last 48, 72 hours leading into free agency to make sure that their priorities were met ahead of the new league year and that when 4 o'clock hits, all their new deals can become finalized. Now you're asking other teams to have to undo some of their own business potentially or make room and do all these salary cap gymnastics to make him fit under your cap along with giving up draft capital. Because let's not forget, he may have failed a physical. He still owed $60.6 million over the next 2 years.
Well,
that doesn't go away. So this is the challenging part of it, to actually find a team that's going to be willing to give the Raiders at a discount still what they want and take on that massive salary.
But that's the point what you just made. This went from theoretical, great asset management of take a player in his prime, that his prime won't align with the quarterback's prime that you have now coming in Mendoza, capitalize on it, 2 first-rounders who will align with the prime. That was the initial. Now you have to salary dump him. And I'm not saying you're going to pay another team off to take him, but 2 firsts, there's no way. Courtney said it. You'll be lucky if you get 1 first. In fact, I don't think you're going to get a first. I think you'll get a conditional second at best, but now you got to salary dump him.
And now you're going to have to be the aggressor on this, probably.
Yeah, which is wild to think. And to the other part of this is going to be a wild day around Crosby because let's say there is that team that's like, at 2 firsts, we had no interest because we know he's banged up. Like, as Courtney's mentioned, what are the Ravens surprised he didn't look great in the physical? He wasn't supposed to. He's not playing games today. He's playing games in September.
That's September. Exactly how he was supposed to look.
Exactly.
They took the liberties to
exactly right.
have some loopholes.
So now, if you're another team, I mean, you're probably looking at this and say, well, for a second or a second and a third, let's get in on this. But we already committed to John and Joe. And now, maybe we have to back out of our commitments with them. This is not a 2-team move. This could be a myriad of teams that the trickle-down of effect could actually impact if all of a sudden another team tries to scoop them up at a lesser cost, but can't financially because of, well, we were gonna sign this guy, but now we're not.
Would you want your team to do it in the Patriots?
Would I want my team to? Do I have to then back out of other deals? Like, do I have to tell your guy Romeo Dobbs coming over for the Packers, sorry, you were at 4 years and up to 80. We can do 2 years and up to 30 now, but we have to alter this. Like, that's what could happen here today.
But the reason I ask is because he's obviously a player that is an impact player that now becomes available. And based on everything we're hearing and reading, it seems like the consensus around the league is more on the Ravens side of this than Maxx Crosby and the Raiders. So if you are a team and you're looking at this thinking, we could get him at an advantageous cost to us, but it's going to cost us. And we're going to have to do a lot of maneuvering here, but are we the ones that are going to go for it? And I ask you, because I'm curious, the Patriots have floated out there, would you want to try to move around the puzzle to go out and get him?
So I believe that everyone who says, well, this is going to affect a team long term, guys are not going to want to sign there. Name me a team in sports that is screwed up, or screwed over a player, that all of a sudden can't get players in the future. You know what gets players in the future? When somebody offers $10 and you offer $11. That's what gets players. What, the Ravens are never going to get players again because they backed out of this trade? Give me a break. Give me a break. That's just not going to happen. So as much as it's painful to say, hey, we agreed on this deal in principle, but if we can get this guy for a cheap price, yeah, you have to consider that, don't you? If you're every team out there.
Yeah.
I mean, Court, the team you cover, the Chicago Bears, was rumored to get him. If they have to back out of a Devin Bush deal, right?
Yeah, but they're not the right example to use here, and for a couple of different reasons. And I know there was some report out there from, I think Rich Eisen pointed it out. To my understanding, they never offered 2 first-round picks for him. That was way too steep of a cost. There was only one other team that I think we should be talking about a lot today, which is the Dallas Cowboys. Remember, they were runners-up in all of this on Friday. Monday, they decide that they're going to pivot with Rashawn Gary, who, think what you want about him, with Micah Parsons, 8% pass rush win rate, was not a very effective player last year. They still gave up a 4th to go get him. Dallas giving up the 4th to the Green Bay Packers. He's got the history with Christian Parker, all of the things that. You would think, okay, well, if you could upgrade that player, then with Maxx Crosby, you would do it if that was a player you're originally going after. But it doesn't work like that as seamlessly because of the fact that his money and the structure over the next 2 years is very complicated. And when you have to start messing with his contract and what you're going to end up paying him, how you're structuring it, what the cap hits are like, that affects your other deals of players that you're bringing in free agency. So it's not as simple as, we are intending to sign one pass rusher when 4 p.m. comes around. Another one that we think is better that we originally wanted comes onto the table now. We can just swap one out for one. It's not that seamless. But then that's where the Bears come into the conversation. That's when other teams, I would say the Eagles, obviously, because they just let Jalen Phillips go, but who knows as far as what their free agency plans are, if they're going to be aggressive too. But there's other teams now that, as the Raiders have to be the aggressors here in trying to move Maxx Crosby in the next 11 hours, they're going to look at this and say, well, we still need a pass rusher. We don't want to undo all the things that we just did. We're only going to take him at this price. Because remember, Trey Hendrickson reportedly is going to decide where he's going today. So now you don't only just have Maxx Crosby available at a price that might be more in your range. You also have Trey Hendrickson, who, while he was apparently wanting in the Jalen Phillips to Danielle Hunter range, which is a big gap between 30 and 40 million, and also just the fact that the floor is at 30 is absurd. Now you have more options. So you can call their bluff a little bit on the price, and I think work a deal out for yourself that is far more advantageous than it would have been a day ago.
Yeah. There's so much more to this. We don't know where he's going to end up. We don't know what's going to happen with either team, the Ravens and the Raiders. We also have to point out, it is still on the table that Maxx Crosby just goes back to the Raiders. Mm-hmm. That is still technically on the table. College basketball, home stretch, conference tournaments obviously going on right now, and we have all the coverage on ESPN Radio. Tune in tonight for the ACC tournament. Coverage begins 6:30 p.m. Eastern on select ESPN Radio stations. So a guy who got punched in the face by one of his teammates during the season 9+ years ago is back with that same team now. That's an oh, by the way story. We'll get to that next. We're on Sportsmanlike, presented by Progressive.